What if your local government told you that before you could exercise a constitutional right, you had to pay over $2,000 just for permission? Not to buy a car, not to start a business, and not even for a luxury, but simply to carry a firearm for self-defense. Well, that is exactly what's happening right now in San Jose, California, and the price just went up again. And if you think that's outrageous, just wait until you hear the details. On July 1st, the San Jose Police Department officially increased its concealed carry permit application fee to $1,591, and that's just the city's fee. Applicants have to pay 20%, about $318, when they submit their application. If they're approved, they'll owe the remaining $1,273 before the permit is even issued. But here's the part that's really unbelievable. That $1,591 doesn't include California's mandatory state fees. It doesn't include the required psychological evaluation. It doesn't even include the mandatory firearms training course. Those costs are all paid for separately. But by the time everything is added together, a first-time applicant in San Jose can easily spend well over $2,000 just to legally exercise what the Supreme Court has already recognized as a constitutional right. Now think about that for just a second. Now imagine if a city charged you $2,000 before you were allowed to speak freely or attend church or even vote. Most people would immediately recognize that as an unconstitutional burden. So how is it somehow acceptable when it comes to the Second Amendment? Now, supporters of these high fees often argue they're simply covering administration costs, but constitutional rights aren't supposed to depend on how much you have in your bank account. A right that only wealthy people can afford starts looking a lot more like a privilege than a right. And that's exactly the concern many gun rights advocates have raised. Now, what's even more interesting is how quickly these fees have increased. Now, just before the latest increase, San Jose already charged $1,491. And back in January of 2024, the fee was reported to be $1,290. By February 2025, it had climbed to $1,328. Now it's reached $1,591. That's roughly a $300 increase in just 2.5 years. So this isn't just a one-time adjustment. The cost has been steadily climbing, making it increasingly difficult for ordinary law-abiding citizens to obtain a concealed carry permit. And here's a comparison that really puts things into perspective. According to San Jose's own fee schedule, a retail firearms dealer pays $1,655 for an initial business license. Now think about that. The city now charges a private citizen almost as much to carry a handgun for personal protection as it charges gun stores to open for business. And that is a huge comparison. Whenever asked about previous fee increases, a San Jose Police Department spokesperson said that the department uses what's called a time task analysis model. In other words, the city says these fees simply reflect the amount of staff time required to process each application. But critics argue that's missing the bigger constitutional question. Governments don't get to price constitutional rights out of reach simply because administering them costs money. The First Amendment still has to be protected, even if it requires police officers to manage protests. The Fourth Amendment still applies, even though courts and judges cost taxpayer money. And many Second Amendment supporters believe the same principle should apply here. Now, the concern is that excessive fees, mandatory psychological exams, and lengthy training requirements don't just regulate the exercise of a right, they discourage it. For many working families, spending over $2,000 isn't realistic. That means that some law-abiding citizens may simply give up on obtaining a permit, not because they're disqualified, but because they can't afford the government price tag. Now, whether that's the intended outcome or not, it's certainly the practical effect. And now it's your time to shine in. I want to hear from you. Do you believe charging more than $2,000 to obtain a constitutional carry permit is a reasonable administrative fee, or do you think pricing a constitutional right this high amounts to unconstitutional barriers? I want to know what you think down in the comment section below. Now, if you found this information just as appalling as I did, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss future updates on Second Amendment news. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.